Welcome back to the Infamous Project, and this is going to be our third episode on Project Tax Return, which you see sitting behind me here, a 1988 notch 505 speed car that I got as a roller just last week. Now, if you guys are following my Instagram, then you might have seen the post saying that, well, the car is sold. If you guys aren't following my Instagram, make sure to check it out and follow along, because I can definitely throw out updates and information a lot quicker than I can on some of these videos. So the car pretty much sold after that first video that I put up stating that it'd be for sale and for sale as a project. And I told everyone, reach out to me personally on my email and let me know what you wanted. And I got a lot of feedback as far as Australia, US, Canada, pretty much everywhere. However, one individual who reached out to me, he lives maybe an hour away, not even too far, and was really excited about the car. He had looked at a couple, wasn't very happy with what he was finding. So we talked about what he wanted to do for a project. He came the next day to look at the car, and I love these types of buyers that know what they want and they're not wasting time, because he showed up, showed him around the car, showed him how clean it is, the paint, the body, the underside, and everything, and he was sold. So you guys might be wondering, what direction is this car gonna go? Now you guys might be wondering, what's the scope of the project gonna be? Well, you can see by the parts in the background here, I'm kind of doing this part of the video at the end of the day, and you guys are seeing it at the beginning of the video. I'm already well on my way to getting this car where it needs to be. You can see there, already got some moldings going on the driver's side. That's pretty much where we left off in the last episode. Now there's a control arm with a spindle and everything down there. Why? Well, already got the K-member swapped. So later this episode, you're gonna see everything that happened and went on today to get the car sitting pretty much the way that it is right now. So the buyer wants the car actually for his wife. He's a big Chevy guy. He's got some pretty cool rides, old Camaro. He's got a Monte Carlo, and I think it was a 55 Bel Air. And this car is going to be for his wife. She had a Fox body back in the day, and I guess he wants to surprise her with this one. So for all of you guys who wanted the Coyote swaps, or somebody who said the LS swap and all of those things, sorry to disappoint, it's not going to happen. He wants the car to be ultra clean and tidy and very stock appearing, which I'm kind of happy about, because that's sort of the direction that I wanted to go with this car to begin with. So all of you guys that were worried about me stripping down that 86, well, it's going to get stripped down because I need some parts off of it. And the reality is, lots of people inquired about that car. You know, is it for sale? I told them, gave them the info, but nobody showed up. And the reality is, the car is worth more to me in parts to put this project together than it is to try and sell it off whole. So the important thing here is that the shell will be available. So if anybody wants an 86 shell, get ready. If you're local, bring a trailer. It'll get forklifted on, because it won't even be a roller. You'll get interior and the body, and that's pretty much it. So if you're interested, hit me up, info@theinfamous project, and we can talk about the 86. Now for this guy, again, he wants it very stock appearing. I'm going to put the set of polished ponies that were actually on Lemon Dropped. They're going to be going on the car. The car's going to get a little bit of a stance correction, nothing crazy, just what stock coils and some aftermarket struts and shocks can handle. Again, it's for his wife, so he wants her to be comfortable and, you know, nothing that's inconvenient to drive or impractical or any of those things. So the interior is going to be staying as is. It's going to be the gray. I do have to retrofit some tweed seats into the back because they're currently LX. Going to be changing off the bumper cover here and the hood. Those are going to be going back to a factory hood, and this bumper cover, which had the intercooler mounted down there, which is now out, you can see there's a big gaping hole there. So I can't just give the car with that big hole. Going to get a new bumper cover, get that painted black, and a stock hood painted black, and that'll be that. Keeping the smoked headlights, and that's pretty much going to be the exterior of the car. Now for the motor, he wants a little bit of power, Nothing too crazy, not gonna be doing any power adders, but he does want some sort of heads cam and intake setup. So the car definitely is going to get converted to mass air. So we'll be wiring that in. I'll be showing you guys on how to do that. Obviously, we're going to be putting in a new engine harness that needs to be from an 87 or 88 because it needs to plug into the car's body harness plugs that are dangling right here. So need to make sure that we're using the right harness to make our lives easier there. And wiring in the mass air really isn't that big of a deal. I'll probably keep a wire tuck. He's fine with that. I asked him, you know, do you want more accessibility to the wiring and to the starter solenoid and things like that? He said it really didn't matter as long as it was clean and tidy, tucked up underneath the inner fender. So that'll be the direction of the wiring. The battery will probably come back up front. So we'll get a battery box and get all the cables and things run accordingly there. Now, back to the motor. There's a couple options here. And the first option is to take the motor out of the 86 that is sitting out back, and we'll do a compression test on it, see what the numbers are like. And if the motor is looking really good, well, then we can bolt on a top end kit. Now, some of you guys out there, if you've been looking at top end kits, they're not really readily available if you're trying to buy them brand new. So need to get creative and find some other stuff. So a good friend of mine actually has a set of Holley Systemac heads. He's got some, I think, performance products intakes and an E303, something like that. So that is available if I want to go ahead and build the 86 motor. Now, the other option is there's another car that I'm looking at that I'm going to hear about tomorrow. Now, if I end up picking up that car, which is a pretty badass car, and I hope I do get it. So in that case, I'd be taking the motor out of that car, which has a full Trick Flow top end kit on it. Then what I would do is I take the stock motor out of the 86 and then I'm going to put it in that car. So I'll update you guys on which way that this goes. I know some of you guys would probably like to see a motor tore down and the heads and intakes and everything bolted on. But at the same time, it's kind of the path of least resistance, which a lot of you guys could appreciate. And those of you who reached out to me about the car, a lot of you guys were in favor of putting this thing back to stock. And you know, there wasn't that many Coyote requests or anything crazy like that. And honestly, I'm kind of shying away from a Coyote swap. You know, I'd like to do one or something crazy like that one of these days. And if somebody just kind of maybe sent me a motor and everything that I needed to do it, I'd more than happily do it. But for now, we're sticking with the small block Ford, sticking with the original push rod style motor, and we're going to be OG on this one. So that's the direction of the build, guys. Super excited for it. The car did not last long at all. It was just that one video that I put up and this thing was sold. So now we're going to get into the rest of the episode, which is pretty much going to entail getting that intercooler out, getting the tubular K-member removed, the strange coilovers, everything that you see sitting on the floor here. So all the hard work has been pretty much done. I got the intercooler, which was the Mishimoto. That guy's sitting over here. So all of that stuff is already out and the suspension's well on its way to getting complete. So we're almost ready for a new motor to get dropped in here already. And stay tuned because there's a lot more coming. There we go. Intercooler's laying on the floor, removed from the insert of the front bumper cover there. There's a huge, big gaping hole. So much trimming has been done to get that monstrous Mishimoto intercooler in there. So we'll definitely be taking off that front bumper cover and getting a new one painted up. You know, even once there's a new radiator and stuff in there, it just doesn't look right with all those little vertical pieces of the front bumper cover missing, plus all the material that they've cut out. So we'll make sure that we'll get that all proper and looking good. So now probably going to focus on getting the K-member out of the car. So I'll get the car jacked up, pull the wheels off, get the strange coilovers pulled out of there so that way there's no suspension under load or anything like that. You could probably see a little bit of tape in the background there, getting those door moldings and everything stuck and glued on, kind of where we left off in the last video where I reinstalled all the trim. So yeah, once the car's jacked up, load off the suspension, then that'll have me in a position where I can remove the K-member, and then we can put that other factory one back in that I just finished cleaning and painting up there last week. All right, so here's a look in our inner fender well. You can see there's some cross-drilled and slotted rotors on here, just factory calipers. A lot of upgraded hardware throughout this entire car, all in the engine bay, everywhere else. So going to be pulling a lot of this off. So I'll pull the calipers off, and then we'll jack up underneath the lower control arm. Then we'll pull off these strange coilovers and get them out of the way. We'll also be disconnecting and dropping the tie rod off of the spindle here, and whether we leave the spindle in place on the K-member or drop it all together, we'll see how things go along. And then we'll get at these two main bolts up in the top here, so they go straight through the frame, and we'll get them loosened off. And then there's another two down here, kind of near where that jack stand is, and that'll allow us to drop the K-member, obviously, once we disconnect everything on both sides of the car. So we'll get to stripping this apart and get this K-member out of here. Alright guys, so with not too much effort here, managed to get the strange coilover out, the brake caliper off, dropped the tie rod end down. We loosened off the steering rack. Had to take the bolt out of the steering shaft just to get enough room and clearance to be able to push the rack off of the sliders on the K-member there. So you can see also got the plate for the anti-scratch plate on the top of the strut tower off, got the caster camber plate, and I did leave the spindle intact because these control arms are actually going to be reused in the installation of the stock K-member. So I think there was tubular lowers on here already, and they sort of got swapped out in between ownerships of the car. Not 100% sure what the story is there. However, I'm going to be using those. So I'm just going to drop everything out, and then it'll be easier to unbolt those control arms once the whole K-member's dropped down. So I'm just going to zip over to the passenger side, get all that stuff taken out, and then we'll be in a position to go ahead and drop out the whole K-member. All right, so everything is now off on the passenger side. Everything's off on the driver's side. And there was actually only one bolt out of the two down on the underside down here on the K-member. Not sure if it was always like that. I hope not, but either way, it's fine. So the back bolts are removed on both sides of the K-member there. Now I'm going to go ahead and crack these bolts up here loose on both sides. And I already got the jack supporting the K-member down in the center there. So once these guys get cracked loose, then be able to drop down the whole K-member here. So I got our other K-member sitting here. This was all cleaned and painted up last week, so it's ready to go in. And there's no reason why we can't get some springs and new struts and everything else installed today, so that way the front end is pretty much ready to accept a new motor. So someone's obviously replaced the hardware when they put the tubular in, so everything's all nice and new and shiny. You know, the car's been put together not too long ago, so everything is coming apart really, really nice, which is really good for me, but for any of you guys that know what it's like trying to pull your K-member out of a 30-year-old Fox body, especially if it's seen some elements, it's definitely not going to be this easy or this clean. So it's always nice when you're working on something when you can stay clean. So I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loosen this one up a little bit. I'll go over to the driver's side and pull and kind of do the same thing. Just so that there's still a little bit of support left here while I go ahead on the other side instead of things being completely off, and I'm trying to do a balancing act with all the weight. Here we are, both K-members laying here. Here's the factory one, and there's the tubular that just came out of the car. Now, of course, for anybody who wouldn't be up to speed on tubular K-members, you know, they're really good for aftermarket applications. If you're putting a really big motor in and you want weight reduction, they're not as bulky. They help you with oil pan clearance. They're lighter. So there's a lot of advantages there in terms of why you would want to run that tubular K-member. In this case, since we're going to be going with a stockish, you know, normal 302, the stock factory K-member will be more than sufficient to be able to, you know, cradle the power of that motor and with the car, since, you know, the buyer wants a more stockish looking and feeling Mustang at the end of the day. So I'm gonna go ahead now and take the control arms off of this K-member. So these big bolts going through those bushings down there, get those guys off, and then that way they will be ready to bolt onto here. So we're pretty much there. We'll get this guy installed in, get these control arms installed, and then we'll be able to move on to some springs and struts. All right, little intermission of the video, guys, because I just had to share with you what I got myself for my 40th birthday. And it's sitting behind me here, an OG Texaco gas pump. Now it's been fully restored, and I've been talking to the guy who does these for 2 years now, and I've always wanted one of these things, and I was determined. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put some money aside, I'm gonna get me one of these because I want it down for the shop in Texas. But funny enough, the guy was based out of Canada, so when I was in Dubai, I was chatting with him and trying to arrange the logistics and arrange a Texaco pump, because he also does White Rose, he does Shell, he has a whole variety of them, but I specifically wanted this Texaco one. So today he dropped it off. My birthday is not till the weekend, but I'm super excited about this thing. Like, it's sweet, and I can't wait until the sun goes down, because it's actually wired so that the globe lights up, and it's super cool. So I'm sure any of you guys out there can probably appreciate this thing just as much as I do. If you are interested in one, let me know. I can probably put you in touch. And man, this thing is just badass. I keep coming outside just so I can look at it, especially with the weather being so beautiful. And it is designed to be outdoors. That was the one thing that I wanted, and the one thing that actually he stresses. When he dropped it off, he said, I really hope you're gonna install this outside, because so many people, they get them and they put them indoors, but he's like, I restore them in a way that they can take the weather, whether it's hot or cold. So here it is, guys, check this thing out. So here we are getting ready with all our suspension here. Got our springs, took a little bit of material off these guys, so we should have a pretty good stance, nothing too low, nothing too crazy. You just wanted to make sure the car sat a little bit lower than what the factory normally has. And got a nice set of pretty much takeoffs. Somebody had these in their car for not very long. You can tell they look brand new. So going to be putting these KYB XLG struts in. And I took the hardware off of another set of factory struts that I had, because I need all of these strut mounts. Cleaned up these covers in the Varsol tank, so make sure all those go on. Make sure to keep all the dirt, dust, and debris out of there. So we'll be getting everything all cleaned up, wiped down, ready, put the K-member in, and get all the suspension in, and get the car sitting back down on the ground. All right, guys, I managed to get all of the steering rack placed back in there. Now, the bolt setup is different. I am gonna have to find or get some steering rack bolts, because they are really long for the factory setup versus the tubular K-member, where it just pretty much goes through the rack and then bolts right into what would be on here, just a sleeve where the bolt is passing through. So that's all right though. Most important thing is that it's sitting in place here with our tie rod end. So now I'm going to go ahead and lift up that lower control arm and spindle assembly and get it seated and located in here. We got our bolts installed here for the K-member, so everything is in place. Nothing is torqued down yet. It's really important just to kind of get everything placed in, making sure that everything is lining up and doing what it needs to do, because there's nothing worse than bolting everything back up together and then either forgetting something, or maybe you need to change a part because you notice something isn't right. So we're just going to go ahead, like I said, keep everything snug, and then we'll torque everything down later. But get everything in place here. Once we get the control arm in, then go ahead, put our spring and strut assembly on. There we go. Put our caps back on, got our bump stops cut down a little bit. So the struts are good to go here. Gonna go ahead and bolt in these plates that cleaned and painted up a little bit. So we get these installed. The spring's already seated in the control arm, ready to jack everything up. So once we get the strut mount in there and we're ready to pass the strut up through, then we can go ahead and get this side sorted. All right guys, so let's pass the strut mount up through here. I don't have the fanciest nuts. I'll get these changed. It can be done after. There's no big deal there. All right, so we pretty much got everything good to go here. You know, put cotter pin through the castle nut for the ball joint since there wasn't one there. Nylon locker on the tie rod. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw this pry bar through the spring here. What that's gonna do is just make sure that in case the jack fails, the spring will stay in place. So safety first. See how we're doing here in terms of alignment. So we need to come up a little bit. So that's going to be a wrap for today, guys. I really thought I was going to be able to get this car back down on the ground today, but unfortunately, time is not on my side. We did get a lot done in a short amount of time, because probably really didn't start on this thing until about mid-afternoon today, and pretty much already got that K-member swapped, and one side of the suspension is pretty much done here. So everything's bolted up loosely. Really all that needs to happen is do the same on the driver's side, make sure that everything is lining up and looking good. Then we can torque some things down and put our calipers back on. The car is actually going to be getting the polished pony wheels, so we'll get those put on and get the front end of this car back down on the ground, and the engine bay is going to be ready to accept a new motor. Really good progress nonetheless. And really excited for this project. Hopefully you guys are too, knowing that I didn't just sell it and wasn't going to build it. So thank you guys again for following along. We'll see what happens here motor-wise and what exactly is going to go into this car. So stay tuned. I'm not sure if I'm going to be dropping a video on Saturday just because it is my birthday weekend. If I can knock out enough content and have enough time to edit something up, I will drop a video. If not, you guys are going to have to wait until next week. So my apologies for that. I hope you guys are enjoying Project Tax Return sitting here behind me, and we'll see you guys next time.